Hello, welcome back to Botany 101. I'm Angela Nishimoto, okay? And this is our last episode, session 27, okay? Hard to believe that all this time has passed, since the beginning of the semester up till now, all right? So today, what we're gonna do, you can see that we're in the studio right now, but we're gonna go on a field trip to Down to Earth, which is a health food store. And the one that we're gonna go to is located in Honolulu, sort of like near University Avenue on King Street, okay? So what we're gonna do there, we're gonna do something that some textbooks and other sources call supermarket botany. And what is that? That's actually looking at different kinds of foods, okay, and also associating them with the parts of plants that they actually represent. Like I can talk until I'm blue in the face about, how plants are really a source of food for us, that we cannot exist without plants, although plants could exist without us. But when you actually see it and make the association, because nowadays in our modern times, a lot of us, we go to the supermarket, you have like apples in a bag, or you have cabbage, on view there, but you don't sometimes associate it necessarily with the plant parts itself, okay? So here we go, we're gonna go to Down to Earth and just relax and enjoy, all right? Hello people, here we are at Down to Earth in Honolulu. We're actually on King Street near University Avenue, sort of like in the heart, okay, of the university area, right? And we're at Down to Earth, which is a natural food store. Some people call it a health food store as well, okay? What we're gonna do today is we're gonna look at food, okay? And we're also gonna look at food and sort of, because of course, one of the plant's main function is to actually feed us. Yes, for us anyway, that's our part that we play in their lives, okay? So, one of the things we see here, we'll see something like this. We're gonna start with the roots. And this, of course, this sort of looks like a carrot, except it is a different color, sort of like a yellowish, brownish color. This is what they call a parsnip. And this, of course, you can tell, it's a modified taproot. Not only is a taproot, but it's a storage root. Remember that we talked about the fact that storage roots and taproots that are from, what do you call that? Temperate areas, they tend to store starch and store sugar in the root. Why do they do that? Because these plants are biennials. They will actually germinate, the seeds will germinate, the plant will grow, it will actually photosynthesize, store a lot of nutrients in the root, food products in the root, over winter, the above ground portion dying off, during the winter. Then the next season, you have the stored food in here being shot up, or actually transported up the stem and into the leaves to make more leaves and also to make flowers and fruits, okay? So this is something that happens in biennial plants, plants that live, okay, for 2 years, okay? So some of these include parsnips, like we see here. And I know parsnips might be very unusual. You might not be used to seeing them or even eating them, but still, it's always good to kind of broaden your repertoire in terms of something that you can eat, right? All right, so here, what do we have here? We also have some beets, little baby beets here. And of course, beets are a good source of beta carotene, very nutritious, all right? And you can also eat every part of the beet. You can actually eat the beet greens as well. I think you could probably just chop them up and even the leaf part and cook them along with the bottom. They're very delicious. And beets actually have kind of a lot of sugars in them a little bit, yeah? Usually beets are sweet, okay? And here we have an unusual kind of radish. Look at that, isn't it beautiful? So it has actually a little bit of the red that you usually see in radishes, but also you have this kind of different kind of coloration, a little bit of variegation. Yes, you have both red and you have white. Very beautiful, yeah? So when you look at all this food, doesn't it really make you want to eat? Doesn't it make you want to cook and eat something delicious, right? All right, let's see. And we also have another standard, carrots. These are in the bags. And of course, carrots are another kind of storage root. And in fact, when they start to bloom in the next year, you actually have something that they call Queen Anne's lace, okay? Queen Anne's lace, which are the flowers, all right? Because of course, these plants, a different kind of temperate area plants that have these storage roots will actually send up the inflorescence in their second year. That's why they're called biennials. Bi means 2, right? And annual refers to years, just like annual means years, yeah? It actually also refers to a ring, yeah? All right, so we're gonna continue on this way here, all right? This way here. And we see here we have some sweet potatoes. Look at this. So these are other kind of storage roots, except of course, these are storage roots that are from tropical areas and subtropical areas. And I think maybe legally, okay, they call these, you can see that says called jewel yams, but these are actually sweet potatoes. These are just different varieties, because I think in the olden days, native Hawaiian people had more than 200 varieties of sweet potato. They differed in terms of the color on the inside. Some of these you might be able to see are yellow inside or orange. Some of them are white, some are purple. We don't have any Okinawan sweet potatoes here, but still, generally, any kind of food that you eat, any kind of vegetable food that you eat that's brightly colored, oranges, reds, yellows, very high pigmentation. This is very nutritious food. Not only that, the flavonoids and other colorants that make it that color are actually sources, okay, of what they call antioxidants. Different sorts of food products and also medical things that kind of prevent oxidation. So think about it. What is oxidation? Oxidation is when you have electrons from an atom or a molecule being grabbed off it. So it's very damaging, okay, to your cells. That's why something that we mentioned before, what they call oxidation, might be actually responsible for cell aging and cell death. And if you eat, a diet that is very rich in fruits and vegetables that are highly colored, generally what will happen is that that supposedly is supposed to help prevent too much oxidation in your body, okay? Right? And here we have other beets. Look at the size of these guys, see? They must have been really very, very much nurtured by the soil that they were in. And of course, if you recall, what is the function? What are the main functions of the root? Okay, remember? Think about it for a minute. What is the main function of a root? Okay, roots function in anchoring the plant, whether in the soil or on another plant, right? So you have terrestrials, and you also have epiphytes, such as orchids, such as bromeliads, like some of the ones that we see up here on the little display, okay? So you have some plants that will anchor into the soil, called terrestrials. You have others that actually anchor onto other plants. So these guys here once had life, So these guys are probably in their harvested stage. So these have actually lived for about a year. Look at all this food, okay? All the photosynthesis that these must have gone through in order to make such a big root, okay? So remember that one thing that the plant does is that it actually allows for anchorage. Another thing the plant root does is to provide for absorption, right? Absorption of water, absorption of minerals and such. And you can actually see these small little rootlets here, very small, yeah? So this is actually a giant taproot also serving as a storage root for this plant, okay? Anyway, beets, very good for you, okay? And yes, so one of the things that is a current thing in the way people are thinking about food is people kind of think of food as what they call, in the literature, sort of like nutraceuticals and a lot of the alternative medicine thing. So what they say is that if you're eating food, try to eat the best quality food you can get. It's good to go organic, because even if the pesticide isn't necessarily on the surface of the plant, okay, not always, but when the plant is actually sprayed with the pesticide, generally they believe that some of it is actually absorbed by whatever food plant that you're eating, okay? So it's good to go organic if you can. And you might think, oh, but organic produce, it's so expensive. But think about it. If you actually invest the money in buying good food now and eating well now, well then maybe in the future as you get older and as, people start to get a little physical problems, maybe that won't need to happen to you because you would have taken care of your body very well. So some people believe that the extra cost in terms of eating well and eating organic might actually be worth what you're investing, because you're actually investing in your own health, okay? Hello there, people. Now here we are. We have some members of the kingdom fungi. This is what they call, of course, a portobello mushroom. If you've been to some of the eateries around in Honolulu and other places on Oahu, you know that sometimes they make this really nice portobello mushroom sandwich in some places. And look at this. So here are the reproductive structures underneath. This is actually a mushroom. Okay, so it is a fungus that is in the group, the basidiomycetes, Because what do? They have their spores in a structure known as a basidium, okay? So these guys this is actually the above ground portion of the fungus, because of course, this is not exactly a plant, even though botanists do study mushrooms, okay? And people who are specialists in studying fungi are called mycologists. Do you remember that from the very earliest part of the semester? Yes? So this is actually a fungus, and this is what they call so-called fruiting body, but because of course it doesn't have fruits. So you see these gills under here. On these gills, you actually have the little basidia, and on them you'll have like maybe 2, maybe 4 spores. Okay. as the mushrooms go through their alternation of generations. So if you've been to some of the eateries in town and you tried a portobello mushroom sandwich, it is very good. It tastes very good. What they tend to do is like saute them in butter and put garlic and other herbs and spices on it. Another thing about it too is that people do say that it's supposed to taste like meat, but I have had a portobello mushroom sandwich and it doesn't taste like meat at all. It really doesn't, but still, it's still very good to eat. And most of what you eat when you're eating a fungus is that you're eating a lot of water. Okay, there doesn't have very many calories in it, right? So what do? They saute it in garlic, butter, and then they put all this other stuff on it and serve it on bread, and it's really delicious, you know? Very good, okay, very good food. Now, most of the mushroom is actually underground. Even though this looks pretty big, what's underground is like all that hyphae, which is all the cells under the ground. You know, just like when you're digging in your garden and you have like a little white fuzzy stuff underneath that looks like roots, those tend to be fungal hyphae, okay? And this is actually, this structure here, this mushroom, this fruiting body actually is, if you were to tease it apart, it's actually all these filaments called hyphae all coiled together. So these, you know, aren't necessarily divided into the kind of structures that you usually see in plants, okay? So you have portobello mushrooms, I manhandled that enough, okay? We also have something else that is supposed to be really big in terms of health. We have something called shiitake mushrooms. I think some people believe that eating shiitake mushrooms and using it in cooking, it smells very earthy, that it's supposed to be very good for people. It's supposed to actually be a medicament almost like a medicinal plant, okay, shiitake. And then we have the regular white button mushrooms. And do you know that my husband is actually from the Philadelphia area. We were visiting his family a long time ago. And what happened was that we went to this place nearby, which was sort of near where Longwood Gardens is. I think it's called Kensington Square. Well, that has a sign there. And of course, if it's a sign, most people will figure if it's written, then it must be true. It's called the mushroom capital of the world, which is right near Philadelphia, nearby, a few miles away. So we have white mushrooms. So can you see this all sliced up in a salad or sauteing it, you know, and putting it in a stir fry or something like that? Good stuff, yeah? Okay. Very good. All right, and then what we're going to start on next. So we looked at the roots, we looked at something that's not exactly a plant, but here, okay, look at this. Isn't that wonderful? This asparagus, look at that, these skinny, tender-looking parts. So this is actually representing part of a stem. It has the apical meristem up here on top, and these tend to be sort of like the shoots, okay, the shoots that kind of coming up from the ground, usually in the springtime, yeah? You know that you could probably grow asparagus in your garden at home, and you could actually have a pretty good crop. I used to work for somebody in a nursery in Waimanalo, and his family owned the land, and he actually had a whole area where he had all these asparagus plants setting up these little shoots. Very delicious, especially if you can eat them fresh. If you eat asparagus in the can, well, I'm not going to denigrate it, but it's really nothing compared to when you actually make your own asparagus. You can actually steam it or with a little bit of salt, or you can actually saute it if you want to, but probably the best way to go with a lot of vegetables to keep all the flavors of the vegetables is to maybe doing a little bit of steaming. Because if you steam it just right, it's al dente, it's still firm, but soft enough for you to eat. It has a lot of flavor in it when you eat fresh asparagus, okay? Very good. Okay, so here we have an example of a stem. Okay, a stem that we can eat, asparagus. So this is like the tip of the shoot. So people tend to harvest it when only a little bit above the ground because, of course, if you leave them go, they'll have leaves coming off here at the nodes. Because remember, a stem, okay? A stem has nodes right here, and they also have internodes, right? That is a function of a stem. That is the structure of a stem. So if you actually look at a root, oops, let's not break that. If you look at a root, this is a root, and one of the things you see is that it does not have nodes, it does not have internodes, right? So roots and stems, they're different organs. So always, you can identify a stem by the presence of nodes and internodes. So this is beautiful asparagus, yeah? Okay, all right, let's see. Okay. All right, what are we looking at right now? We're looking at stems. Remember, we just saw some asparagus, but here we go. Here, do you recognize this? Okay, some people call it ginger root, but of course, it's not a root since we're talking about stems. It's sort of like circular logic, but there you have it. Now, if you look at it, you can see they have these scales here on the surface of this horizontal underground stem. This is an underground stem that moves this way. What happens is that here and here and here, etc., these are where the nodes are, okay? With the areas between them being internodes, yeah? So you have nodes and internodes, and this, of course, is a horizontal underground stem. Can you remember what it's called? It's called a rhizome. Remember, R-H-I-Z-O-M-E. Ginger, okay, edible ginger, okay? Gingerbread or something, okay? Now we also have this one here. This is a little bit more unusual. As far as I know, I think that maybe people on Oahu can get their supply of this particular kind of horizontal underground stem or rhizome. These two are related. You can kind of tell when you look at them, right? Ginger and what is this? This is something called turmeric, okay, turmeric. And locally it's also known as olena, okay? Olena was originally introduced into Hawaii by the first Polynesians, okay? So what those people did is they brought it with them, and it was used oftentimes mostly for, well, as a colorant. It was a source of yellow and gold and orange when people colored kapa, you know, or tapa, the bark cloth that people wore. Like the men would wear malo, yeah, like a loincloth, and women wore something called a pa'u, or a skirt, yeah. Mostly people didn't really need to have clothes in Hawaii, except of course for modesty, you know, and for ceremonial purposes and etc. So they would actually use this. You can see that it's kind of orangey in color, okay? So they would use olena as a source of colorant, okay, for various bark cloths. Another thing also is that you could actually extract the juice from this, okay? And you could use it to treat sinus infections, ear infections, things like that, because olena or turmeric does have sort of antimicrobial properties. It does actually have some antibacterial properties, antifungal properties, and etc. So people in the olden days did use this as a medicinal plant, and people still do. In fact, a lot of times if you want fresh turmeric, you can come to Down to Earth, and not just that, is that some people, when they're making their different kind of curries, whether South Asian, Southeast Asian curries, a lot of people who like to cook, you know, they love to actually make the spices on their own, grind them up just before they use them, you know, and it's so delicious. I don't think that there's anything you can ever compare curry powder with actually, you know, homemade curry spices when you put into it. And at the same time, why don't we talk about the difference between a spice and an herb? Because sometimes people use them interchangeably. That's not exactly the case. A spice is usually from the root, okay, from the bark, okay, from maybe the stem sometimes, other parts of the stem. Let's see what else. Also the fruit and the flower buds. Okay, that's usually also from tropical trees, tropical and subtropical kind of plants. Now generally what we call herbs are things like basil, things like thyme, things like tarragon. They tend to be the root and maybe some stem pieces of, you know, usually annual plants that live in more like a Mediterranean climate or maybe a cooler climate, okay? So you have leaves and a little bit of the stem from cooler places like in Europe, and then you have the other parts of the plants usually from tropical, subtropical areas, and that's usually referred to as spice. So there is a difference between herbs and spices, okay? But olena, very, very good. So I think the people here, the people in this store actually probably get this from, I think, the Big Island or Maui. I think it might be Maui, because I think a couple of years ago I heard that there is a farming venture going on one of the neighbor islands, and they're actually growing olena for use here. Very delicious. You should try it, you know? You could probably try to experiment and use it, you know, along with other sorts of spices and such. Now another thing we can see, here we are carrying the tray, is you can see some garlic cloves. Isn't this great, right? Garlic. Actually, garlic is actually, some people believe that everybody should eat garlic every day, okay? Very good, antimicrobial. It's supposed to help, you know, as an adaptogen. It kind of helps stimulate your immune system so you don't get sick as often. The only thing about garlic, just like onions, is that the compounds that they make actually will diffuse to your lungs and you will breathe them out. That's why you heard of garlic breath, you heard of onion breath, right? So this is very, very healthy. You know, and I love garlic myself. I told a friend once, I think she was cooking dinner for us, and I said, I love garlic, it makes me want to sing, something like that. She kind of checked herself. She was going to say something sharp, I think. Anyway, so garlic, very, very good. Excellent for your health, even though it does have an odor. Like if you want to take garlic for your health, and it's supposed to be a blood thinner as well. So it's supposed to be good for people who have problems with kind of thick blood in a way. It's supposed to help to thin your blood, if that's what you want. You don't want to take garlic on a regular basis or a lot of it if you have bleeding problems. If your blood doesn't clot very well, you don't want to take that, okay? Onions, what would cooking be without onions, okay? Here's one, a yellow kind of onion. And do you remember, garlic and onions have a special kind of stem. Do you remember what the stem is called? What kind of stem adaptation this is called? We talked about rhizomes, right? And here we have something called That's like tulips, a bulb. Okay, it's actually a bulb where you have a very, very short shoot inside here. You know, the inside of an onion has a little stem like that. And most of what we eat, of course, all this part here, all these part here are actually modified leaves. Okay, look at this beautiful red onions. So if you can, try to eat fruits and vegetables that have a lot of pigmentation. That's very good for you. You know, very good. Excellent, you know. It's a lot healthier. Even though sometimes, I guess red onions are supposed to be very good also because they're supposed to be milder in taste than the yellow onions. That's one of the reasons why they're also more expensive sometimes, because they're milder in taste, so they're at a premium, okay? I think we also have Maui onions in Hawaii. Maui onions, right, from Maui. They grow them at relatively high elevation. They have all those farms over in Kula, other places like that. So I think I remember hearing that when Frank Sinatra was alive, you know, he was a wealthy man. So what could he do? He could actually pay to have them fly special for him Maui onions over to where he was, because he was like an old Italian, old-fashioned Italian from the northeast part of the country. What did they do? They had all those fruits and vegetable stands, you know, out on the street. It's just like you might have seen in The Godfather when somebody tried to kill the Godfather, Vito Corleone, right? So he would actually take the onion, get the paper off, he'd eat it like an apple, okay? Some people like it. I know I tried to do that, I think, because I think I read about it in a book when I was really young, like 12 years old or something, and I sort of insisted to my mom that we buy a sweet onion for me to eat, and of course I bit into it. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, you still have that kind of sulfurous. And you notice that when somebody has been eating onions, their skin as well as their lungs are giving off the onion smell, okay, as well, all right? So what it is that the compounds that actually make garlic have that kind of taste, all those sulfur compounds, that's what it smells like. So if you actually get your skin and you scratch it, you smell it, it actually smells like sulfur. It smells like almost like a match that you've struck, okay? Anyway, so these are some stems that I wanted to take a look at, okay? All right. Now next we're going to be looking at some leaves in a way, okay? So if you take a look at this, what do you see? You see all these veins, right, going right up this part here. Now this part here you can see are some part of the leaves, but what is this? Okay, so I already told you. Anyway, if you take a look, you don't see nodes or internodes. You know this isn't a root. Well, for one thing, it's not underground, so it is green. So what is it? It's actually part of a leaf, okay? This is a part of the leaf. Remember the two parts of the leaf? Generally, you have the blade, the part that's sort of like this, usually flattened, and this does most of the photosynthesis. And then you have this part of the leaf, and in this case, this part called the petiole is actually extended and lengthened, okay? So sometimes people get confused because they think that celery is actually a stem because it's long and skinny. But no, it's not, because when you look at it, it has no nodes, it has no internodes. Okay, so celery, good example of a petiole, okay? Sort of like stump you sort of thing, okay? Now let's get a nice one here. Right next to it, in the bin next to it, you have, of course, you recognize this? Yeah? Just like you might recognize this one too? Yeah? These are two members of the same species. These are both Brassica oleracea. Okay, Brassica oleracea, they're actually descendants of wild mustard. We look at this a couple of times during the semester. This is, of course, broccoli. This, of course, is cauliflower. Okay, when you look at them, what do you think? What can this be in terms of plant organ? What could it be? Okay, we'll give you a couple of seconds to take a look. Look at that. Doesn't that look good? Doesn't that make you want to just kind of steam them and put some maybe some kind of a spicy something on them? You know, you could make a really nice curry with broccoli and cauliflower, other kinds of things like that. In fact, my own thought sometimes is that it wouldn't be great if somebody made a restaurant that was like a curry bar. You could actually choose the vegetables you wanted. If you wanted to add chicken or you wanted to eat lamb or something like that to it, then you could add it. Then you go to the place where they have sauces, you know, whole bunches of sauces, 3 or 4 sauces that you could dress your curry with, you know, and with rice and whatever you want to eat with it. Give up? Okay, so these, of course, are flower buds, okay, flower buds. So these are actually broccoli florets, flower buds, okay? So these are actually still considered to be vegetables, okay, even though they are, all right? Let's put these back nicely, all right? So people won't want to, you know, not buy them, okay? Now look at this, isn't this gorgeous? Look at the color, purple. Okay, probably due to the fact that this kale, which is another relative of the broccoli and cauliflower group, okay, including cabbages, and this is called, of course, kale, all right? So here you can see you have all these nice anthocyanin pigments responsible usually for purples, okay, for blues, and also for pinkish kind of coloration in leaves and sometimes in flowers and etc., okay? So this is very scrumptious. Yeah, can you imagine just kind of making a beautiful, like a salad, or sautéing it or cooking it very, very lightly, still having a little bit of a crispness to it as well. Yeah, crispness. And what it is, it will be very delicious. Okay, so this is broccoli and also kale and also cauliflower are also supposed to be anti-carcinogens. All these different kinds of plants, what do they call them? They call them crucifers, right? Why do they call them crucifers? They call them crucifers because generally if you have a stem growing, the leaves come off in two on this side, two on this side, two on this side, two on that one. So if you look at it from the top, it's like a cross in a way. Okay, very delicious, very beautiful looking. Okay, you ever want to cook this and serve it? I'll be happy to come over. Okay. And now here too, we have here some Swiss chard. Okay, this is red chard, and you can see it's also lots of color. Lots of color, very important in terms of entertaining, in terms of making something beautiful for your guests to really appreciate with their eyes as well as with their taste buds. Okay, that's what they say in some cuisines, that actually looking at something is part of enjoying the meal. When you have something presented to you that's very beautiful, that's probably something that you really pay for when you go to a kind of a 4-star, 3-star restaurant. Is a presentation is also very important. It's like a show, that the restaurant is putting on for you, and that's partly what you're paying for. Okay, let's see, we'll continue on. And then what we have here, of course, we have cabbage. Okay, good old-fashioned cabbage. Okay, cabbage is actually developed probably in the 1500s, 1600s in cold parts of Europe. And cabbage is also related to broccoli, also related to kale, also related to cauliflower. In fact, it's the same species, okay, Brassica oleracea. These 4 different species plus Brussels sprouts plus kohlrabi, these were all derived from wild mustard, okay, in Europe over a span of maybe just a couple of 100 years. Okay, very good, very delicious, okay? So hope you can enjoy it, like I do. Okay. Look at what we have here. We have apples, okay? We have pears of various kinds. We have oranges and other citrus fruits. Okay, so think about it botanically. What kind of a fruit are apples or pears, right? Remember, apples and pears are actually similar types of fruits. They're actually in the rose family, of the plant families, the flowering plant families. What are these guys? Oh, doesn't that look wonderful? Look at that. Okay, you can imagine somebody biting into the apple, right? Okay, so what do you think? What kind of fruit is this? Do you remember? We talked about this before. Remember that inside, if you were to cut it longitudinally, you have a little section in here with the seeds inside of it. That part you usually don't eat when you're eating around the apple, right? Because what this is actually what they call an accessory fruit, where the part that we eat is not actually part of the ovary. Because what is a fruit? A fruit is a ripened ovary, right? So this actually has ovary inside, and what we eat here is what they call receptacle tissue, developed receptacle tissue after pollination and fertilization. Okay, so this receptacle tissue isn't actually part of the ovary. That's why they call it an accessory fruit. Okay, and this of course is the pome, P-O-M-E. I think in French they call it pomme, right? P-O-M-M-E in terms of apple. And in fact, I think Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote a short story based on the myth, the Greek myth of Persephone, right, being taken down to Hades. Anyway, so I think that he called it pomegranate seeds, I think, okay? Because pomme, of course, means apple in French. And pears are the same way. Remember, too, that pears have this sort of gritty stuff inside of it, that when you're eating the pear, it has like a grit in it, kind of hard, and those are what they call sclerides, or stone cells, okay? So pears actually have the stone cells, and they are also accessory fruits known as pomes, all right? Now, oranges and other, look at this wonderful color. Look at this beautiful color, Look at that. And these are certified organic. And we have larger things like this. I'm not sure if this is a grapefruit. It looks like a grapefruit, yeah? Citrus fruits, oranges, grapefruits. Okay, we have blood oranges. I think we've seen an image of this. What do? If you cut it open, the inside is red, okay? So it has intense pigmentation, very healthy for people. Blood oranges. I guess because the red inside is so intense, it's almost like blood. Limes. Limes are wonderful, okay? In fact, let's see. Some people drink certain alcoholic drinks just because they put lime in it, okay? So limes, another kind of citrus fruit. We've got tangerines, right? And etc. What kind of fruits are these called? Do you folks remember? Okay, think about it for a minute. Okay. It's sort of interesting, you know, because these are called Hesperidium fruits. And when you think of Greek mythology, you actually had a place called Hesperides, right? You actually had a garden of the Hesperidiums or the Hesperides. We actually had apple trees, which is kind of interesting. Okay, but these are called Hesperidium fruits, all the citrus fruits. What are their qualities? They're actually sort of berries because they have many seeds inside. They have a skin, but they also have this rind on it. You know, when you peel a tangerine or something, you have the rind with kind of bitter underneath, and the thing is that if you scratch it, it has like a kind of a oily scent, sort of like a citrusy sort of smell to it, yeah? So lemons, of course, are in here, pomelo, okay? Things like that. Some people call it jabong. And another thing is that the sort of meat inside, the part that's formed from the ovary, is actually segmented into different compartments, okay? So this is actually what characteristics of what they call a Hesperidium, all right? All right, as we make our way backwards this way, we see that there's all different kinds of apples, and they're all good, okay? Remember that old adage that people say, when you're a little kid, an apple a day will keep the doctor away, and that actually makes sense. If people eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, people tend to be healthier, okay, than they eat a lot of foods that have a lot of fat and things like that, you know, too much sometimes, yeah? Well, see, even this intense yellow, okay, have a nice red skin, and they say too, if you're eating an apple, you should eat the skin if you can. A lot of the nutrients of a lot of fruits and vegetables are actually in the skin or right underneath it, between the interface of the skin and the flesh underneath of it, okay? All right, so one more thing I wanted to show you. We also have something called a kiwi fruit. Okay, look at this, all bundled up nice. If you slice it open, the inside is green. Okay, little black seeds inside, very, very good. In fact, this is not actually native to New Zealand, even though it's called kiwi. And of course, a kiwi is actually a bird, a famous flightless bird in New Zealand, which is probably protected by law by now. But they called it that because I guess the skin of this fruit reminded people in New Zealand about it. These are actually originating in China. Okay, these are actually from China. But when they imported it into New Zealand, they thought, hey, we can grow it really well here. Let's take the world by storm and sell it. So they decided to market it as a typical New Zealand plant, so they call it a kiwi fruit. Okay, and this, of course, is a berry. You will see more berries later on. So here we have some more oranges. These are probably locally grown of some kind. These are Valencia oranges, many variety of oranges. And just because something is lumpy, okay, warty, the color is uneven, still, it can still have really good, sweet, juicy flesh, okay? Now here's another fruit here, probably grown locally. Oops, I took off that little label. And this, of course, is an avocado. So what kind of fruit do you think this is? I think we talked about this before. It has one single seed inside, right? A thin-skinned fruit, one seed. Well, this is a kind of tricky question because an avocado is actually a berry. It's a one-seeded berry. It is not a drupe, okay? So berries, okay, berries actually have a single seed, can have a single seed, but the seed of an avocado is kind of soft. You can stick a toothpick in it, right? And kind of put it in water halfway, and you can actually root it and maybe even make a little tree from it, okay? Now, one thing that I'd like to also see, which is kind of back over here. I'm sorry I missed it, okay? We actually have something that is known as a drupe, okay? This itself, okay, is actually a plum. You have one seed inside of it, hard outer part of the seed. They call it a stone, right? So this is actually what they call a drupe. Okay, we're going to see drupes later on too, okay? Alrighty, let's see. Hello there, look at what we have here. We have here blueberries. And these are actually blueberries, and they're actually true berries. Because if you were to take one and eat it, there's like several seeds inside of it, yeah? So this is actually related to cranberries. It's actually in the same group. I think they're also related to ohello berries, I believe, okay? Very nutritious, blue, purple color, very, very nutritious. Not just that, some people just love blueberries because they're sort of semi-sweet. There are many people in Hawaii, they don't want to have things that are too sweet, too sugary in some cases, but blueberries are perfect. For some people I know, blueberries are just the perfect kind of fruit to eat. Doesn't it make you want to eat them? Oh, look at that, right? And not just that, is we also have other fruits here. Okay, look at this. We have raspberries. Okay, so blueberries are really truly berries, but raspberries are not really berries. When you look at it, what does it look like? If you look at it closer, you actually see these little hairs sticking out. The hairs sticking out are what's left of the pistil. Okay, that's actually the stigma and the style sticking out. So each one of these develops from a single flower, but the flower has many pistils. So this is what they call an aggregate fruit. Okay, so you actually have the parts of it all aggregated, different pistils aggregated into a single fruit. That's what they call an aggregate fruit. Oh, doesn't that look good? Ooh, look at that. So raspberries go really good with chocolate, you know, the tart sweet stuff. So sometimes if you kind of go over to a nice dessert shop, you can get that chocolate raspberry swirl stuff, you know. Isn't that great? Yes? Okay, now here too, here we have what they call, a multiple fruit. Okay, this is actually, of course, it's a pineapple, yeah? And if people ever worked at the pineapple factories, of course, the pineapple factories are gone now in Hawaii. It just isn't economically feasible to raise pineapple and can it in Hawaii anymore. I was probably one of the last people or last generation to work in the pineapple factory, you know, over at Dole. And one of the things that they would say is that this is maybe part of the parlance of today too, that people in the pineapple, you know, pineapple canning factory, if somebody made a terrible, terrible mistake that cost a lot of money, they say that somebody has done a papaya, is what they used to say, okay? Another thing, I've actually seen people do this, that when you have workers and they're doing something and they go like this, it means pow, that the job is finished. So you can go home, it's after it's finished. Anyway, to get back to the subject, this is actually what they call a multiple fruit, with each of these little segments here actually corresponding to a flower. Okay, so a multiple fruit develops from multiple flowers. So a good example of that is a pineapple. And another thing about pineapple is you want to buy it, okay, generally when it smells good and kind of sweet, because I think I read somewhere, or heard somebody told me maybe, that when you buy pineapple, it doesn't really get that much riper after you buy it. Yeah, so you have to smell, have a nice, good fragrance to it, and it's really good to eat. Very healthy, a lot of vitamin C. Now here's a seed, it's actually the seed of a coconut, and of course a coconut itself would have been this big, but they have husked it, and this is another example of what you call a drupe. Okay, it's a drupe, has a hard seed, and the liquid, yeah, there's liquid in here, the liquid inside it is actually endosperm. It's liquid endosperm that sustains the embryo that's inside of the seed. Now if you look at this little thing here, you see these three little holes, right? In some places they'll actually punch a hole in there and you can drink the coconut water, which is very delicious. And you know, coconut is supposed to be very fatty, and it is, but they actually are saturated fats, unusual for fruit, but they have found out fairly recently that coconut is very healthy for people. In fact, in the aisle across the way, there's actually bottles of coconut oil that people can use to cook with, because coconut oil has a very high smoking point. It means you can raise the temperature very high and the oil doesn't start to smoke. Whereas if you're trying to do something which won't work, like trying to fry something in olive oil has a very low smoking point. So even if you get it only a little high in heat, it'll start to smoke and you can't use it to cook with. Anyway, you see these three little things here? This is actually why they call it cocos, okay? Cocos nucifera, okay? Also known as new. They call it cocos because cocos is a word that means monkey, okay? They used to say that in this coconut you have a little monkey face, okay? That's why cocos, yeah? Cocos nucifera, coconut, which is another plant that was introduced by the Polynesians. Okay, so the first coconut trees were introduced by the Polynesians. And coconut, in the olden days for Hawaiian people, coconut was kapu to women. Women could not eat or even touch coconut or anything because it was considered to be the body of Ku, which is one of the four main Hawaiian gods. And really, he's like one that you wouldn't want to offend, for sure. Okay, coconut, all right? And we have another mainstay in Hawaii. Okay, here we have papaya. We're just talking about papaya being a mistake, but not according to the papaya people, you know? Papaya, if you cut it open, what do you see? You see like a golden yellow or orange fruit inside with a lot of black sticky seeds in the middle, right? So if you actually have a compost heap at your home, a good idea might be to throw your vegetables and peelings and scrapings and also the seeds of different plants that you're not going to eat. What you'll probably find is that after a few months, you'll have little volunteers, papaya trees growing. Okay, so this is actually another berry. Okay, it's a funny thing. Raspberries are not berries, okay, but papayas are. It's a thin-skinned fruit that has a lot of seeds, right? Papaya, very good. And in fact, this is one of the mainstays of our agricultural economy. People in Hawaii do a lot of shipping to the mainland. So there was that controversy about, irradiating papaya. I think it's still sort of going on. You also have molecular biologists at UHM in CTAR, the College of Tropical Agriculture. They're actually working on new different kind of genes in papaya to keep it, safe from pests. Because the papaya industry in Hawaii is pretty vibrant, sort of vital kind of industry. It's still going on pretty strong. Okay, and here we have tomatoes. Okay, or I had a student who called them tomatoes. Remember, is it a fruit or is it a vegetable? Is it a fruit or is it a vegetable? Okay, Okay, so this is a trick question because botanically it's a fruit, and if I ask you a question about a tomato, I'll be talking about botanically, yeah, but legally, tomatoes are a vegetable, okay? Because I guess the Supreme Court had kind of figured out that generally they deemed that anything that didn't have sweetness to it, wasn't associated with desserts, they should be legally called vegetables. Okay, so we have tomato, okay? Look how beautiful. You can smell it too. Nothing like vine ripened tomatoes, yeah? And then what do we have here? Look at this. Aren't these beautiful? Look at that, isn't that? I know a lot of people in Hawaii might not be used to this. They're usually used to the long skinny one, the Japanese style eggplant, but this is, of course, an eggplant. And I know that it's kind of associated with Italian cuisine, like eggplant parmesan and stuff, but this is actually a New World plant that was taken to Europe, you know, from the Americas, okay? This is a member of the Solanaceae, so there are some people who can't eat members of this group, including tomatoes, potatoes, as well as peppers and also eggplant, okay? But for some people, it's really delicious. I think the other day at the LCC cafeteria, they had eggplant parmesan. It was really good, okay? So round eggplant like this is usually the kind that most people find in the supermarket in most other places except for Hawaii. So if you're cut into it, it has seeds. Okay, so this, of course, is a fruit. And this particular one has, of course, thin skin, lots of seeds inside. So it is actually botanically a berry, another berry, just like the tomato, just like other things that we've seen, okay, such as the blueberry, okay, such as banana, okay, which we haven't seen. Now look at these gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous peppers. Look at that, how beautiful, yeah? So lots of color, and not just that, is that it has a little bit of a sweetness to it. Now we have a friend, okay, that she would actually be, she used to entertain a lot. She and her husband used to entertain a lot, and she'd actually buy these red, you know, sweet peppers, okay, which in some places are very expensive, but you know, one of the things is the longer somebody holds on to a piece of produce, the more expensive it has to be because it actually is something that needs to be paid for, okay? So generally, if you got a green pepper and you actually take it home, leave it on your table, you know, or put it in a paper bag, it will eventually ripen to a yellow pepper or a red pepper or an orange one, okay? When I told our friend that, because I said, oh, you know, we had a housemate, and she used to do that. She used to buy a green bell pepper, leave it on the counter, and then it will actually turn red after a while. She said, oh no, don't tell me that, don't tell me that, because I guess it's because there's a big difference in terms of the cost for that, okay? Now, so we have green, so these are actually not quite ripe. See, here's one that is turning, yeah? So eventually these green peppers will eventually ripen into orange or red or yellow. And of course, why does the plant do this? The plant does it because we see orange, red, and yellow a lot more and a lot easier than when we see green, okay? It's a signal to us animals that the fruit is ripe, the fruit is sweet, because the carbohydrates that would have been in the pepper will actually break down a little bit. So when you're eating a red bell pepper, yellow bell pepper, or orange bell pepper, it's sweeter. It really does taste more sweet than a green pepper does, okay? Now in terms of this part here we have the humble cucumber, okay? What is this? So this is actually a fruit as well. If you were to slice it, okay, you can actually have a lot of seeds inside of it, another kind of berry. In fact, this is a kind of berry that's known as a peepo, P-E-P-O. It's generally a berry that has kind of like a thick rind, and this one doesn't really have that thick of a rind, but cucumbers are still considered to be peepos, P-E-P-O, which is another kind of berry. Okay, cucumbers, okay, very good, right? Ooh, look at these guys. Look at that. Look at the color. Yeah, look at what it looks like. Look at all the markings on it and everything. Isn't this beautiful? What we're seeing now is different kinds of squashes. Look at that. Even these kabochas, look how tiny this guy is, yeah? Sometimes these guys can be larger, of course, yeah? But here they are. Very beautiful. This one here has a little bit of sweetness to it. I think all squashes, when they get to be more ripe, tend to be sweet because, of course, they're fruits, okay? And all these different kind of squashes, okay, generally you knock on them, yeah, to see if they're ripe. Now these squashes, these are also fruits because they do have seeds, okay? Now don't be confused because of course there are some fruits that don't have seeds, such as bananas, you know, like those little black dots inside of them. Those are actually unfertilized ovules. Whereas you even have something like sweet, really sweet fruit that is, Asian people like to eat during the holidays, persimmons, right? That doesn't even have any seeds at all, but still, okay? Those are still fruits because there would be seeds in them if they were seeds, okay? So here we have another squash. And these are all different kind of fruits known as peepos. Look at this, how nice. Can you imagine, you know, Thanksgiving tables set and everything, and in the fall time you have all these different kind of squashes being so beautiful, okay? Very good to eat as well. Everybody's probably eaten squash soup, you know, Chinese style soup that has a melon in it, melon soup I guess it's called, and some people also make stuff like with bitter melon. My own thing is I never got used to taste of bitter foods, even though in Chinese cooking they say that you have the 5 different tastes and you have to balance. So if you have a really good kind of formal Chinese meal, you'll actually have all the different tastes from sweet and salty and bitter and sour, etc. Okay? Anyway, so here we have melons, all right, of some kind. Okay. Well, look at all this stuff here. Look at all this stuff, okay? What do we have? Okay, we have all kinds of grains here. Rye flakes, barley flakes, wheat flakes. There are rolled oats. Okay, all of these, of course, are from cereal grains. Remember what grains are? Grains are another kind of fruit where you have actually the seed fused to the fruit wall. Okay, so these are called grains, okay? You have all these different kinds, and of course, what do they make? Cereals, right? Cereal grains, yeah? So we have all of these things here. You can eat this on a nice cold morning, you know, boiling them a little bit in hot water, adding maybe a little bit of honey or some other molasses or some other kind of sweetener to it. Very delicious, wonderful, wonderfully nutritious as well, okay? Furthermore, look at this. We got lima beans, okay, soybeans, okay. I guess this is some kind of kidney beans. They have it labeled chili beans. I think this is some kind of kidney beans, Phaseolus vulgaris. Light red kidney beans. We have garbanzo beans, okay. Remember that both grains and also beans also have a lot of protein in them as well. They balance each other out. So usually if you eat a grain with protein such as beans and rice together, okay, or beans and corn, oftentimes they'll balance each other, okay. Another thing about this too is that remember that these beans and the seeds, or the seeds of the grains, actually have a lot of endosperm. Remember what endosperm is? Remember you have one sperm fertilizing the egg, that becomes the embryo or the new baby plant of the next generation. Another sperm fertilizes the polar nuclei, that develops into endosperm. Endosperm is actually a source of many part of the calories that we humans need to survive, okay? So it actually sustains the baby plant in the seed, in the fruit. It also sustains humanity as well. So look at all these grains. This is just a little bit, a very small sampling of all the grains that actually exist, all kinds, the whole shmoo, okay? So today we've actually seen a small way in how, in a very small microcosm of all the very big role that plants have actually played in humans' diets, okay? We've only looked at a few plants, and of course there are many more, and many more products as well, all right? So here we are, very happy to be here, and also to remember that generally you want to make sure to know that plants have a direct relationship between what we eat, things that we use, and our lives, okay? It's the very sustenance, it's actually the very basis of our life and our livelihood, all right? Thank you, aloha. Hi, and welcome back. Didn't we have a good time over at Down to Earth? I know that I did for sure. I love actually going to the grocery stores and looking at food. I just love going up and down the aisles. It drives my husband crazy. But still, you know, food shopping is one of the happiest things that you can do together with the rest of your family, you know, or even by yourself if you like to do shopping that way. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into, let's see, parts of the plant, because one of the things that we have found out, and we will continue to emphasize, is that, you know, plants are food for animals, okay? Basically the basis of the whole food chain on Earth. Life on Earth would not be possible if it weren't for plants and blue-green bacteria or blue-green algae, and also the algae. Yeah, these are the photosynthesizers. Remember at the beginning of the class we talked about that they are the producers, okay, in any ecosystem, okay? So we need plants, okay? Plants don't necessarily need us, but we need plants. Okay, and so one of the main functions that plants serve for us, for our human needs, of course, is as food. Okay, so we have vegetables and we have fruits. Vegetables from the vegetative organs of the plants. Okay, and can you think about what the vegetative organs of the plants are? Okay, think about it. Okay, remember, there are 3 of them, right? We're going to take a look at them. And then you also have the sexually reproductive organ of the plant, right? Because the vegetative organs of the plant can sometimes do asexual reproduction. Okay, but sexual reproduction is generally performed through the flower. And generally, if you have a fruit, any kind of fruit, any container that has a seed inside, you know, a plant container with seeds inside is actually a fruit. Okay, and fruits develop from flowers. Remember, so this is what we're going to do, a little bit of a review. So if you look here on the Elmo, okay, what you'll see here, of course, is a flower, right? So here you can see, if you kind of go back and plumb your memory, right, this is actually a flower of a dicot. Of course, it's an ornamental hibiscus. The Latin name is probably some variant of Hibiscus rosa sinensis, yeah? So here you can see it has, you know, well, we can look at it here. It has 5 sepals, and in this case, the sepals are green, right? It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals. Right away, then you know that this hibiscus is a dicot. Remember, we have differences between dicots and monocots, and one quality is that dicots have floral parts in 4s or in 5s, whereas monocots have floral parts in groups of 3s. And here you have the sexual part, okay, of the flower, right? The sepals serve to protect the bud, okay? The petals serve to attract the pollinator. Then these parts here, the male part, produces the pollen, right? Or the male gametophyte. And this here sticking out, this is a 5-parted stigma, the sticky surface that receives pollen, all right? So here we have a flower. I know this is hibiscus usually, well, sometimes isn't something that most of us eat, but if I replace it with this sort of dissected one, poor thing, yeah, I kind of cut it in half. What we'll see here, let's kind of, let's see, zoom in, right, like this a little bit. And what we see here at the base, okay, here, this is the base of the flower where all the other parts are attached. Here's one cut open, and we see here part of the style, a little bit, this little thing poking out. And here we have the ovary, and you can even see the ovules in here a little bit. Okay, let's see. Yeah, the ovules right in there. And these ovules in here has the egg inside of them. Okay, so after pollination and fertilization, this ovary will swell and become what we know of as the fruit. Okay, so we're going to do a little survey, okay, of the plant organs and some of the examples that we can find being made for food or used by humans for food, as well as other animals using them too. Okay, so what I'd like to start up, from the bottom to the top. And generally the bottom of the plant, okay, of the flowering plant is generally, right, the root. Okay, so we know that roots function in anchorage, right, of the plant in the soil or on a tree, whether the plant is a terrestrial, okay, or an epiphyte, okay, either one. And then so generally too, roots can also function not only in anchorage and absorption, but if we look at the Elmo here, you see here an example, okay, of a storage root here. And this one, maybe people might not be that familiar with it, but some people might be. This is, of course, a storage root. You can see that it's swollen. You can see a little bit of the smaller roots coming off of it, and this is what they call a daikon, okay? It's a Japanese and Chinese radish. It has generally a little bit of a milder flavor than the red radishes that more people are more maybe familiar with, but here is one example of a storage root. Many storage roots occur in plants that are biennials. They live over 2 seasons. And here's another one. Remember on that down-to-earth shoot, we actually did see, you know, we kind of spent a little bit of time here on a root of beets. And this one here, it's kind of like a dark purplish red, okay? You can actually even see the little, the other roots. So this is actually a modified taproot, modified for storage in another biennial. Okay, so we have daikon and also beets, generally growing in temperate areas, right? Temperate areas where you have a cold season. So these plants tend to be biennials. And the fact that they make storage root actually has to do with the plant's behavior. Because it needs to overwinter, okay, in the ground, it actually needs the food reserves to keep itself alive. Okay, when the above ground portion of it, the leaves and the stem, aren't really functional. Okay. Then lastly, we also have here, in this case, an Okinawan sweet potato, okay, very nice, very nutritious. The inside of it is a nice purple, and if you boil them, or if you bake them, or you steam them, the inside is real purple. It's really, really good. All those bioflavonoids, you know, very healthy for people, okay. So in the daikon, in the beet, and here, okay, in a sweet potato, we have an example, okay, or 3 examples of roots that are storage roots that we use for food, Okay, we kind of exploit the plant because of its natural habit of making a storage. We use it for food. Okay, that makes sense, yeah? We humans are very ingenious, you know? We really are. And very, very special animals we are. So, but we still are animals. We still need to eat food, okay? So then, the next thing we want to look at, we talked about the root just now, okay? And then what we'll have next, here of course, is an asparagus spear, okay? So this asparagus, what they call an asparagus spear, is actually a stem. Okay, so we looked at the roots, and now we're looking at an example of a food that is primarily stem. So here you can see the little places where you could have secondary stems coming off of, right? Here you have the nodes, okay, and the region between the nodes called the internodes. All right, so here we have an example of that. And at the apex of this stem, we'll have a little meristem in there somewhere. Okay, so generally asparagus, edible asparagus, if you actually let it continue to grow and don't harvest it, it will actually put out, you know, just like the ornamental asparagus, it will put out all these little leaves and things like that. Okay, so this is actually primarily plant. Okay, it's just because we humans use it in this way that we know of it as a kind of food. All right. So asparagus, a good example of a stem that we eat. Can you think of another example? Okay, think about it. What about watercress? Okay, that's another one, and I think a lot of people like to eat watercress because I think it's a good source, vegetative source of calcium. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to zoom a little wide. Okay, and we're going to show. Let's see. Let me straighten this out. We're going to show an example of an apical meristem. Okay, this here. Okay, look at that. The background and the cabbage are actually the same thing. So here, okay, what we'll have here, you can see. This is actually the cabbage head. This is one of those funny ones, you know. I think that a lot of markets now have these ones that are kind of flattened. And that was kind of interesting, but, you know, they're still green, I guess. They're light green. We can still eat them, okay? All right, so what we have here, we have at the very tip what we call an apical meristem, where you have very, very small cells where cell division, active cell division is going on by mitosis. And this is actually the inner part of the stem, right? And these are the leaves. Okay, so most of the time when we're eating cabbage, we're eating the leaf part of it. Okay, even when you have wonbok kimchi, okay, or cabbage kimchi, those generally are made from the leaves, okay, of the plants. All right, so these of course are leaves, okay, of this particular cabbage. So here we have an apical meristem, a stem with the leaves coming off the stem at the nodes. Okay, so cabbage is actually very much a compressed stem. And remember too, the cabbage is another crucifer, right? Remember on the video of the Down to Earth, okay? We looked at broccoli, we looked at cauliflower, we also looked at kale, I believe, and then we also have cabbage, okay? These are all members of the same species, Brassica oleracea. Pretty remarkable, huh? Humans have managed to take wild mustard and cultivate it and then do breeding with it to develop the parts that we wanted to have as food. Okay, remember too that cruciferous vegetables are also, okay, they're also supposed to be an anti-carcinogen. They're supposed to help your body, you know, kind of fight against any kind of chemical or other source that might cause mutations, because mutations can sometimes end up as cancer, but it doesn't have to be. Not all mutations are bad. Okay, now next we're going to be looking at some examples of plants parts, okay, that are stems. Okay, we looked at the stem here in the asparagus, we looked at it in the cabbage, and now we're going to look at a few specialized stems. Okay, so if we look on the Elmo here, all right, you see here red onion, okay, another good source of anthocyanins or plant pigments. And one of the things you can see is this one looks like it's actually sending stems in both directions, because here, this is actually the stem of the onion, yeah, when you cut it longitudinally, okay? So this part here is actually the stem with these little roots sticking out, and of course the part that we eat are actually the basal part of the leaves. Okay, because when you think about it, leaves don't have nodes, leaves don't have internodes, okay? And so this little thing, as small and compressed as it is, will have nodes and internodes, and this is where the leaves are coming off at the nodes on these little stems, okay? So onion, okay, a good example of what kind of stem adaptation. Okay, think about it. What kind of stem adaptation? Another example is garlic. Okay, I think there are ornamentals such as tulips that have the same thing. And these are what you call, I guess, think about it, okay? It's actually called bulbs, right? Bulbs, remember that from the lecture that we had, and also the little field trip that we took over to Down to Earth, okay? Now on the elmo, we have another kind of stem adaptation that we tend to use for food, okay? Or at least a flavor enhancing, right? And this, of course, is ginger. Okay, what is it? It's zingiber, right? Zingiber officinale, I believe it's called, which is the common edible ginger. Now, these have been introduced or brought into Hawaii quite a while ago, and it is a cultivated plant, okay? So here you can see that you have the scales, okay, covering the areas where you have the nodes, all right? So this is actually a stem. Even if people say ginger root, it is not botanically a root. Okay, it's actually a horizontal underground stem, okay, that's called a rhizome. Remember rhizome? Okay, R-H-I-Z-O-M-E, right? Rhizome. Okay, rhizome is an example here in ginger. Okay, we also looked at Olena, right, on our little field trip there to Down to Earth, okay? Now, third kind of stem adaptation that I have examples of here is this humble potato. Okay, it's a humble, what they call Irish, well, actually they call it a russet potato, I guess in the supermarket here, right? And some people call it an Irish potato because potatoes have been associated with the Irish, yeah? But originally potatoes come from Peru, okay, the high Andean regions, yeah? So they like cool, they like humid, which is one of the reasons why they did so well in Ireland, yeah? So here you can see that it is indeed, it's actually an underground stem, an underground storage stem. They tend to occur near the tips of the roots and they actually swell up and they store starch. So here you can see one structure here, another structure here, and one over here and one over here. What happens when you leave a potato, you know, in the closet for, you know, in your storage area or in your pantry? What happens when you have that there for like a couple of weeks? What happens? Well, then you'll have the development of stems just from this storage stem. You have the little eyes budding out, right, making more stems. Okay, so potato is actually a storage product. It's actually a storage stem and has probably been hybridized and developed for over thousands of years, okay, in the Andes. Okay, very much a plant that has changed history in the world. Okay, one of the reasons for that, of course, is the population. Okay, in many places in Europe actually exploded. You had a big population growth due to the fact that people had the potato, which I guess Spaniards and other people took back with them to Europe. Okay, so what did they do? They could grow them in poor soil. They can grow them in places that were cool, that were wet, and in rocky patches of soil too. Okay, so then a man and his wife, a husband and wife, or a man and a woman could have a whole bunch of kids, and they could feed their whole family on like 1 acre of potatoes. Okay, and other crops are not as undemanding. Okay, but we know what happened after that kind of monocropping. Okay, all right. So here under the elmo. Okay, we have an example. We saw this, of course, in the Down to Earth field trip. This, of course, is celery. Okay, what I wanted to show you about this before too is that if you actually have it and you break it, you know, all these stringy parts in here. Remember when we were talking about tissues? Okay, this is what they call parenchyma, right? Remember we had parenchyma, generalized cell type. We have parenchyma, which is all these stringy parts, like in celery. Right? And you have sclerenchyma, such as in sclerites and in fibers, okay? So, of course, this, remember, recall from the shoot, right, from the episode over at Down to Earth that we went on today, where you have that this is, of course, an expanded pedio, probably from human beings, hybridizing and breeding and etc., making celery, okay, which, of course, you can enjoy, which I sort of remember, I guess, a long time ago, that my parents' friends actually put cheese whiz or something like that in the celery, and that was like a little poo-poo or a snack. Okay, okay. So we looked at the roots, right? We looked at the stem up to a certain point. Okay, and now we're getting into the leaf. Okay, in this case, think about it too. Cabbage has leaves. You have spinach leaves. Okay, you have lettuce leaves. So different kinds of Chinese cabbages, bok choy, ung choy. We tend to eat the leaves of those too. Okay, so leaves are also very important in terms of needing greenery because you know greenery is very important in order to get all the different kind of nutriments that you need. Okay. Now remember that we looked at this at Down to Earth. Okay, remember this is broccoli. Okay, another crucifer, and then here you see. These are little florets, okay? I didn't know this before, and I'd actually had, you know, I would buy broccoli all the time, and cook it with pasta, you know, and use dressing on it, like a cold pasta salad. So here, okay, one of the things that can happen is you might have these broccoli florets in your refrigerator, okay, for days, maybe a week, and then it all turns yellow. You can still eat it, even if it's yellow. Okay, what the yellow means is that the flowers have opened. Okay, but still, it's still edible. Broccoli, a very good source of, I guess, vitamin C and vitamins A, I guess, because it's one of those dark leafy greens. And people tend to eat mostly the florets, okay, but you can actually peel the stem parts of it and eat that as a vegetable too. You know, you could actually just chop it up and add it, and you can, it has all the nutriments that you might need, okay? Furthermore, okay, another kind of food here. Isn't this great? I haven't ever cooked artichoke before, but this is actually a flower. Okay, this is actually a flower with all these modified leaves making up this short shoot axis, right? Remember, alles ist blot, okay, alles ist blot, which means it's all leaf. Okay, so this is actually a flower, okay, artichoke, right? Very delicious. I know that I do the lazy way. I go to Costco and I buy the bottle of artichoke hearts, and I eat that with spinach, like a spinach salad with artichoke hearts. You can actually use the oil that it's in to actually spoon over your salad, and that's very good. And then when we come to the flower, what are we going to come to? We're going to come to the fruit, okay, of plants. Now, one thing I want to show you, let's put a different color on here, okay? We have, of course, the great banana. You know, there's supposed to be like something that a man planting a banana plant in old Hawaii, that he would say, kamai'a nui e, kamai'a nui e, the great banana, you know, is really true. And I'm not joking, because part of planting things is sort of making magic, sympathetic magic, to have a nice sturdy plant that will make a lot of fruit. And bananas are a kind of fruit that we call a berry. Okay, it's kind of strange to think about it, but a banana is a berry. It's a thin-skinned fruit, okay, with a few to many seeds. And you might think, well, the bananas that we eat don't necessarily have seeds, okay, but you have the little black dots inside of them. Those are unfertilized ovules, okay. So we have here an example of a berry, and we have other example of a berry like this here, grape. Okay, a grape is actually a berry, and in the case of cultivated ones, we actually have grapes that don't have any seeds. So they actually develop, you know, after being treated probably with some kind of hormone to keep it from developing seeds. So here's an example of something we talked about before, which is called parthenocarpy. And here we have a drupe, the mango, which is not such a humble fruit, you know. This is a great local thing here. Mango season, you know, coming in late spring, early summer, all right? And that's an example of a drupe. It's a thin-skinned fruit with one seed with a hard outer coat. And then here we have a lemon, okay, a citrus fruit, a hesperidium, all right? One thing I want to show you for sure. Here we have what we call a strawberry, okay? But a strawberry, okay, is not a berry. It's just kind of a strange concept. You see all these little things on them? Each of them is actually an individual fruit. They're not seeds. Individual fruits called achenes. And this swollen part that we eat, that we like to eat, very delicious. Strawberries are among people's most favorite kind of fruits. This part here is actually receptacle tissue, okay, just like in the apple, okay? Anyway, so we have the apple. Remember, apple is what we call a pome, right? Apple is what we call a pome, with this part here being the ovary, usually the part we don't eat, and this part being developing from receptacle tissue, okay? Now, okay, one last thing, okay, oops. Excuse me. Here we go. We have the pineapple, okay? So this pineapple is an example of a multiple fruit. It smells really good. Each of these is an individual flower, okay? Multiple fruit made from multiple flowers, all right? Okay, so we went through different kinds of fleshy fruits, and I'm going to show you an example of a dry fruit right here in this can, okay? So one of the things I want to stress is generally, okay, when we go to the supermarket, we see plant parts, but we see them not attached to the plants. So that is sort of like a kind of a strange modern disconnect that we have, you know, between plants and modern day living, which isn't necessarily very healthy. You know, we're sort of estranged from what we call nature, even though when you think about it, okay, cultivating plants and agriculture and making, food that we do, agriculture in our societies, even if it's big time agriculture, but still, we have this kind of disconnection. We don't really go to the earth. But what we did today is we went down to earth, and what we did is we actually got to see food, and hopefully, with this class, you might have really learned how food, okay, as well as shelter, as well as clothing, as well as fuel needs, okay, a lot of our needs are met by plant. So if that's one lesson you're going to take away with you, I hope it's that we need plants, okay? So it behooves us to actually do right by them, okay? Thank you very, very much, okay, for all your attention. Okay, this is a great opportunity for me. I love doing it, okay? And hopefully I'll see you in the future, okay? Aloha.